There she is.
It's here. Yep.
Okay. And I have the folks, there's a number of people called in, but I think they're mostly all for the second application.
Looks that way.
All right. So we know Jerry's not going to be here, but Sarika was, so at least we'll proceed now and then,
Oh, here's Francine.
okay.
Okay,
Tell me I don't have an agenda printed.
okay, okay.
Hi, Francine.
Hi, sorry. I'm having
Hi.
trouble with my internet.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started then? Since Jerry isn't here, I'll just read the call to order. Do we have recording on? We're live?
Yes.
Okay. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-10 and regulations governing remote meetings, NJSC 5:39-1.5, I here declare that this meeting of the Holmdel Township Zoning Board to be open. And now it's electronic notice of this meeting was provided in notices dated January 8th, 2021 and April 30th, 2021. Notices were also sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Two River Times, and posted on the bulletin board and on the main access door to Town Hall. Notices were filed in the clerk's office and posted on Township website at www.holmdeltownship.com. During public hearings, there'll be an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions or provide comments once we reach that appropriate time part of the meeting when we open it to the public. At that time, you'll need to use the raise hand feature on the bottom of the screen, and you'll be invited into the meeting by the chairperson one at a time. You need to have audio and video capability. Be sworn in, ask to provide your name and address for the record. If you have any technical difficulties, please contact the phone number listed in the webinar information. It's at the bottom of the agenda. That roll call, please. Loretta?
Okay. Ms. Avron?
Here.
Mr. Blumenthal?
Yes, here.
Mr. Buffalino? Ms. Campus?
Here,
Mr. Hearn?
Here.
Mr. Orphanatopoulos?
You're muted, Dimitri.
Here.
Okay,
Sorry.
That's okay. Mr. Pesci?
Here.
Ms. Kalor? And Mr. Latif?
Here.
Okay.
The quorum. Okay, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and just follow, stay standing for a moment of silence. Honor our troops and first responders. I pledge allegiance
to the
to
flag
the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Going into our first item. Item 1, A&E Associates, Verdi Woods Residential Development, Block 50-13, Lot 1, Zoning Board Variance, number 2015-4. It's an applicant which granted approval on December 20th, 2017. The applicant seeks an additional one-year extension retroactive from December 21st, 2020 to the end of the previous extension to December 19th, 2021. At our last meeting, we had a brief discussion on this. There were some changing circumstances or concerns raised, and since we tabled it to tonight, Mr. Alfieri, the attorney for the applicant, was to speak and bring us up to date. I'd like, in the absence of Mr. Buffalino and Sareka, I'd like to then, for this application, seat Mr. Latif.
Right.
Ralph,
Yes,
if I may, I think this is a point where I probably have to recuse myself. Sal Fury represented my variance for the barn.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
okay. Thank you. You're gonna presumably drop out, and then one of us can call you at the time we're going back into for the next item.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Anthony. Just to clarify, does anyone else have any potential conflicts with this applicant? And presumably the notice and everything else continues to be in order.
Everything's in order.
Okay, Sal?
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Salvatore Alfieri on behalf of the applicant. As the chairman indicated, we are here tonight for our second one-year extension. We sent a letter in support of this request in March of this year, and it outlined the status of the outside agency approvals that we are working on. Two issues were raised at the last meeting. One was a violation that exists at the property, which Mr. Ward, the engineer in my office, were unaware of. We did get information from the client about that violation. As of this morning, he indicates that they are working to address it. They had to get a demolition permit to demolish the structure that was the subject of the violation. The water has been, according to the client, the water's been turned off, the gas has been turned off, cable has been disconnected. A plumbing permit for the disconnection of the sewerage was submitted. It hasn't been issued yet. The well, they're waiting for a permit. The electric shut off. The electric company is supposed to come to the property in a day or so to shut that off. And apparently Mrs. Eckert is who my client's dealing with, and he indicates that she's aware of the status of the permit. So obviously that, although that violation is really not relevant to the extension request, it is something that my client is addressing and has to address independent of this forum. The other issue that was raised was relating to the school bus stop. That's a condition of the approval that we have to satisfy before this approval is ever perfected. We are waiting for the county approval, which will at least give us the details as to where on the road a bus stop can be located. We've been in communication with the county. We believe we have it worked out, but again, that's a condition of approval that can't be modified in this form at all. So we understand that has to be addressed. Once we get through the county, we will then coordinate with the school board. And other than that, Mr. Ward is present if you have questions. As the board probably is aware, the extension is simply to protect the applicant against a zone change, which I believe is not likely, but we do this just as an extra precaution in case that were ever to happen. We're hoping to have the approval perfected by year end and not ask for another extension. But one of the permits that is outstanding still is a treatment works approval for the from the NJDEP for sewer, which we received Bay Shore Regional Sewage Authority approval. And the last step for sewer would be the TWA from the DEP. If we get that in time, we believe we could perfect by the end of the year.
Okay,
And
thank you, Mr.
all I have.
Alfieri. Do any of the board members have any questions at this time? with
Yes, I have a
regard-
question for Marty.
Yes,
Go ahead, Val.
I would like you to outline for me what ability we have or what requirement we have in which way we vote on this application.
I didn't hear you, Val. Can you repeat that?
Yes, so I voted against approving this application, and I'd like to know what right the board has or doesn't have, what requirements we have with respect to granting the application as requested.
It's a pretty routine approval. They just have to show that they're trying to get their all their conditions met. Obviously, they've been outlined this evening by the attorney. I really
very
don't
well, I
believe there's
might
any
add,
grounds
but-
to say, yes, and I don't, my opinion, there's no grounds to say they're not doing that. Obviously, we know the school bus issue is a major issue that is taking a long time. And obviously the treatment works is a big DEP permit requirement. So my humble opinion, there's no reason why anyone should question their diligence on this.
So my right to vote against it, I would have to feel that they weren't using due diligence to meet the conditions of the approval?
Yeah, anyone thought that they were not being diligent, and it's an excuse, for lack of a better term, for their being remiss on doing anything. Probably anybody who does that, obviously the board did that as a whole, obviously would be probably challengeable pretty quickly in court. But again, I think the attorney has done a great job outlining what they're trying to finish up.
Okay, let me follow up the Val's question with a very related one. Although this was originally approved back in 2017, a moderate number of our board members were not part of that.
Right.
So this is a separate application and can be heard, and anyone can participate in it regardless of whether they heard or did not hear that application.
Yeah, yes, it's just an extension. And obviously it's contemplated, these things go 3 years for the final, 2 years for the final, then the 3 one-year extensions. Obviously it expands more than anybody's one-year term. So yes, there's no prohibition for anybody like having to go back and listen to the tapes or something like that. You're not voting on the substance of the application. This is a simple little, did the applicant meet its burden to show that it's diligently pursuing its approvals.
So,
to
and
get
if
an
one
extension
had been on the board at that time, whether one was in favor or not in favor of that resolution, that's also separate from this.
Yeah, so all the new board members can definitely vote.
Okay. And
Unless
Val-
somebody has a conflict, like Anthony has a conflict. So obviously if you have a conflict with this application, or obviously that needs to be stated, and then you should be recusing yourself. But that applies for any application.
Any other questions on this? Is someone willing to make a motion?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Francine.
Okay, we're granting the extension so that they can pursue getting the rest of the permits that they need. Is that all that we're, and then they'll have, if we grant this, they'll have until the end of 2021, and then can they get another extension after 2021?
Yeah, three one-year extensions they're entitled to by statute.
Okay.
And that's built into the law. So
Yeah,
the
no,
law contemplates that these things don't happen that quickly.
Yeah.
And there's a question whether they're even covered under the Permit Extension Act, which happened since COVID, which is another issue, but hasn't been brought up. And I don't know if the applicant's willing to even go down that road this time. He's just asking, again, given that they've had issues trying to get their compliance, they just want to, out of an abundance of caution, protect what's happening.
Okay, but now mentioning something about the bus stop, is that because Loretta had given me the original approval resolution? There were a number of conditions as part of that. And the bus stop seemed to be part of that. There are other conditions there. Were those met? Mr. Bucco, I would assume you would be the one that would get all of the confirmation that the rest of the conditions were met as well. Or are they still pursuing some of those?
No, that's correct. Once they get their additional approvals, they'll submit plans for compliance for the whole resolution.
Okay.
All right, so it'll all be in one shot.
Yeah, Mr. Bucco worked with Bonnie Impasamato, who's the township's administrative officer.
Okay.
Together, they will eventually, presumably, issue a letter to the construction office indicating that all conditions have been met. And only after the construction office gets that letter will they issue construction permits to permit the project to go forward.
Right. And we
That's
don't
correct.
get involved in that, Francine. That's not our
No.
role to
Yeah.
approve or not approve conditions. I mean, whether they've satisfied them. We do the resolution of approval with whatever conditions, and that time it's really out of our hands, and it goes upstairs to the administrative office and Bob and Kate to make sure anything that has to go resubmit it is approved by them.
Yeah, but the reason that I asked is because that letter about the bus stop came in it, and that letter of the bus stop was part of those conditions. So that's why I was asking, why are we looking and reviewing that? If that was one of the conditions, why was that letter even submitted to us at this point?
It
Yeah.
came up at the last meeting, all of a sudden that these were issues that hadn't been, people weren't sure what the status was.
Right,
So we said, rather than be confused about it, let's table it, let's get the information so that everybody is aware of what the status is. So as
Yeah.
Mr. Alfieri indicated, they're still working on the school bus stop issue.
okay.
Right. Right. And I think somebody asked the question at the last hearing. So the applicant just gave the letter because apparently no one had seen, or the upstairs had not seen it, or there's a question. So he just voluntarily sent it. It's just for point of reference, really for no other reason.
Yeah, and just my last question on it. It says in that original resolution that they have to submit revised plans. What plan is that? Is that the site plan or is that revised plans? Because some of those things, once, if it's not in the plan, for instance, I think there was something about sewer or pipes or something. How would we know that those conditions, if it's not in the site, I think the site plan should have it, right?
That's where
That's what I
Bob,
do.
that's where Bob jumps in, and he has to make sure all those conditions, including conditions that are in his review letter that aren't specifically specified in our resolution, because it incorporates his other conditions as well. So he checks for
Okay.
everything that's in his letter and our resolution. And if there's something that Kate needs to do, she does the same. And then only then will they tell Bonnie that they're satisfied. And then she makes sure all the non-professional requirements are satisfied as well.
Yeah, see, and I won't even sign the plans until all those conditions are met.
Right.
Okay, so what we're doing is giving them an extension to be able to meet those conditions and/or get the rest of the permits that they need on this application.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? And lacking that, is there a motion to grant the extension?
I make a motion.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Don,
Yep. Roll call.
Ms. Avron,
Reluctantly,
I take that as a yes. Ms. Campus,
Yes,
Mr. Hearn,
Yes.
Mr. Orphanatopoulos,
I'll give also reluctant yes.
Mr. Blumenthal,
Yes.
and Mr. Latif.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Okay, thanks, Sal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, let me take a brief pause here.
So Sarika just arrived at
Right.
7:20.
Right, and as she is alternate one, I will seat her for the instead of Mr. Latif for the absent Mr. Buffalino on
Right.
the next application. And if you'll give me a moment, I want to call Anthony to get him to read.
he's on, Ralph, he's on already.
He's on already?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just telling-
I have to, get him back in.
I just asked him to unmute.
Oh, he is in. Okay, unmute and turn on your video.
There he is. Okay.
There he is. Okay.
So Carrie, if you could let some of the Ken Pape in, Michael Pucci, Michael Testa, John Rea. I'm not sure who John Jar, is that with you, Bob Bucko? Bob?
Yes, that's the
Okay.
traffic engineer.
Okay, John Jar. Felix,
I don't know who that is.
yeah, he's,
He's the applicant.
Felix is the owner, the applicant.
right.
Ah, okay, fine. Let it come back in then.
Is Christine Cafone the planner
Yes.
for this application? Okay, so Christine Nazaro Cafone. And I'm not sure if I recognize Anthony Silver. That sounds familiar.
He's
Well,
environmental.
why don't we give Mr. Pape in and let him identify
Okay,
anyone
he's-
else?
I just had a problem. Can you hear me?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, my screen, I just lost the whole screen.
Ah.
Oh, okay, I'm gonna
We
do,
have you. Okay, anyway.
I'm
Let me,
I'm back. I'm back,
okay, let me introduce the topic and then we'll get going.
surely.
Item number 2, New Horizon Properties LLC, 494 Middle Road, preliminary and final site plan number 2019-3, block 56, lot 1. Applicant proposes to develop the property as a convenience store with a fuel service facility. The property presently consists of a 1-story masonry building and garage. The applicant proposes to demolish the existing structure on the property and construct a 3,000 square foot convenience store and fueling area consisting of 6 fuel pumps. This is a continued public hearing on this application. We had, what, a month ago, the initial hearing on this with the engineering and traffic testimony. Since that, well, let me just pause at that point. Make sure we have everybody on the screen who needs to be on the screen representing the applicant. Then once we get, and also re-swear in, or Marty, you want to confirm the swearing in of everybody?
Yeah, everyone was sworn in at the last hearing. Mr. Pape, right, there's no other new witnesses that you have?
Mr. Flager, yes, Michael Pucci, who is Greg Plusis's partner, is here this evening. Mr. Plusis is under the weather, and Mr. Pucci has been working with Mr. Plusis, so we'll have to have his credentials made part of the record.
Okay.
And
Is
Mr. Chair,
all the other witnesses are here, is that correct? And they were sworn in at the last meeting?
Christine Cafone was not placed on the record at the last hearing, so Christine and Michael
Okay.
Pucci. And
Do
we're
we
also
do that
looking-
now?
If one witness is not let in yet, is that Anthony Silver?
Oh, is he? Okay, we'll
Yeah,
let
he-
him in.
Let him in. He's going to fill
Okay.
if we let him in. Wonderful. So Mr. Silva and Mr. Ray did testify at the last hearing. This evening, Mr. Testa, who was present at the last meeting but did not testify, will testify. Mr. Pucci will assist in the presentation of the engineering, so that's a new witness. And Christine Cafone, the professional planner for this application, will be testifying for the first time. So if you wish to address those issues before we go into any substantive.
Fine. Marty?
Yep, so we'll swear in your new witnesses. If they would all raise their right hand, and you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and if one at a time, if you could just all state your name for the record, please. Michael first, I guess.
Okay. Michael Pucci, P-U-C-C-I.
Mr. Testa, could you place your name on the record?
Michael Testa, T-E-S-T-A.
And Ms. Cafone?
You're muted.
I'm muted. Ms.
She is.
Cafone?
She is.
You're muted, Christine.
Hi, Christine Cafone, planner for the applicant. It's C-O-F-O-N-E. Business address is 125 Half Mile Road, Suite 200, Red Bank, New Jersey.
Okay, we'll get into their credentials when you introduce them.
Really. Mr.
Right.
Flager, Mr. Felix Brusilowski is the applicant, and I will ask him to speak later this evening. Do you wish to swear him in at this time?
Yeah, we might as well. So
Thank you.
Felix, do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yeah. Mike?
You're muted. Okay.
I did, sorry.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
for the record, our professionals have been sworn in on this application, and they remain sworn under oath as well.
Thank
okay,
you.
so let me reiterate that this is a continued public hearing, of which notice had previously been given. It was carried from the prior hearing. notice and all conditions are, so far as we know, are in order.
Everything's in order. Everything's in order.
We'll continue, and since there are some public people listening in, just mention that we continue with the hearing with the applicant making their presentations and discussion with the board. Only after that will we get to a point where we'll permit public questions and subsequently public comments. When we get to that, that's when we'll be using the raise hand feature one at a time. So just Mr. Pape, I would like to say thank you to you folks for having submitted some revised plans which addressed a number of the issues that were raised in the previous hearing. That documents verbal agreements, and for me anyway, that helps complete the process and get everything on paper in an appropriate fashion. So thank you for the work in resubmitting those documents.
On behalf of all the professionals, I express their gratitude for your appreciation. A lot of work during the month of March. I think you can see that.
Right. And also thank you to our professionals who are working with your professionals to make all of that happen in the updated letters from the engineer and the planner to, again, document the changes in the agreements that have been reached. With a complex application like this, I find it very helpful if there are intermediate or revisions, so you don't have to wait a year till you see what you're talking about. Okay, Mr. Pape.
Yes,
continue that.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, board professionals, and public listening, good evening all. My name is Kenneth Pape. I'm an attorney with the firm of Holmdel and Pape, and I have both the privilege and the responsibility of representing your applicant, New Horizon Properties. As Mr. Chair has indicated, we began this application, I think it was at the last week of February, and we had the opportunity to make a substantial presentation. Greg Plusis, the professional engineer, presented the plans and went through the plans in detail. During his presentation of the plans, there were concerns raised by board members and board professionals and the public. And as you've indicated, Mr. Chair, revised plans responsive to those comments were generated by Mr. Plusis and Mr. Pucci, his partner, and those were submitted on March 22nd. Also, since the meeting, the applicant secured the last outside NJDEP approval. That approval actually came through in the last 24 hours. You may recall that we had represented, there were a number of DEP approvals, and Mr. Silva, our environmental scientist, helped provide that outline. We had one that was pending, and it was the flood hazard determination. We are pleased that we received it. We'll make certain that a copy is delivered to the board for their files and a copy to your engineer. The flood hazard determination is consistent with the application that was filed. So we're pleased that the line that came back is consistent with the plan that we presented to you. We also received, after filing those plans, as you've indicated, Mr. Chair, we received 5 reports. We received a revised report over Mr. Bucco's signature that came on April 23rd. We received a revised report over Kate Keller's signature that came May 4th. We received an approval, non-approval. We received a comment letter from David Olson, fire official, Stephen Winters, construction official, and Patrolman Struble and Minosky on behalf of the police department. So what I would like to do, with your permission, Mr. Chair, is to initially, because Mr. Plusis isn't here, I'm going to read portions of his letter into the record with your permission and ask that his partner, Mr. Pucci, confirm the accuracy of those. And then to go through Mr. Bucco's report, I believe that there's 4 on all of those 24 pages. I think most of the comments say addressed, made us all very pleased. There were 4 that I think need a little bit of testimony. 2 would be from Mr. Pucci and 2 from Mr. Ray. So with permission, I would like to have Mr. Pucci sworn, share his credentials, and then I'll go through Mr. Mr. Plousas's letter and ask Mr. Pucci to assist in that presentation. Is that an acceptable procedure, Mr.
That's from my point of view, that's very acceptable. And I think you can follow that with, again, say an update on the traffic, or I don't know if there was with regard to the turning diagrams and so forth.
Sure.
I have a question on them, but let's take it one step at a time.
Sure.
So Mr. Pucci has in fact been sworn in already. If you want to have him present his credentials, and then we can move ahead.
Mr. Pucci, if you would share with all your professional and your educational background.
I am a licensed engineer and planner in the state of New Jersey. I've been licensed for somewhere going on 35 years or so. I have a bachelor's of engineering from Rutgers University. I have appeared before numerous planning and zoning boards throughout the state and Superior Court, including the zoning board in Holmdel Township.
Mr. Chair and board members, may I ask that you accept Mr. Pucci as an expert in his field? He'll be testifying this evening as an engineer.
Okay. Are there any questions with regard to his credentials? Seeing none, we will accept his credentials as presented. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Pucci, I'm going to review the salient points raised in Mr. Plousas's letter of March 22nd. At the conclusion, because I'm an attorney, not an engineer, and cannot testify, I'm going to ask if I have accurately described the revisions that your office has caused to be made to the plans. So I'll begin by pointing out that the impervious coverage of the site was over 60%. It was at 65.3. Mr. Brusilovsky directed Mr. Plousas to remove asphalt to get it to be a compliant 59.9%. So there was a reduction in impervious to under 60% to eliminate the need for variance. The kiosk setbacks were shown on the plan, and they were modified to make certain that they exceeded the 25-foot minimum. In fact, the setbacks are 49 feet and 51 feet respectively. The plan was also added to indicate that there would be no soil needed or soil removed, and that it would be a balanced site. And signage that had been requested of Mr. Plousas to have no diesel service for over-the-road trucks or high-speed nozzles was added to the plan. Also, there was considerable modification to the drive aisles, the parking area, and curb radii to make certain that all of the impervious coverage requirements were met, and more significantly, that all of the turning radius for each of the required vehicles, and there was a list of vehicles that we were requested to, and there were all the potential vehicles that come on the site were met. We also removed one of the monument signs. We had two, and that was a violation of the ordinance and required a variance. We now have only one. We also have the sign setback had been modified so that no variance was required, a full 20 feet off of the right of way. There was some tweaking working back and forth between the architect and the engineer to make sure all the doors matched on their respective plans. The board may recall that there were 4 parking spaces on the Laurel Avenue side of the building, which we were requested to designate as employee parking with signage to reduce the number of trips that would go in and out to those parking stalls. The stormwater management system was designed to be consistent with the 2021 statute, and there were some minor modifications to that were responsive to Mr. Bucko's comments. And we were also directed to supplement the plans by adding the floodway and flood hazard areas on the plan. As I indicated, those plans, we can now add one more note and say as approved by the DEP. We were also asked to remove the vacuum machine, and it's gone. Additional landscaping was required by the board and the board's professionals, all of which has been added. And the lighting plan we were asked to address. Your concern was that we reduce the intensity of the lighting and avoid spillage. All of that was done on the plans. And Mr. Pucci, if it's not too great a burden, I know that you have reviewed the plans and worked on them with Mr. Plousas. is the outline that I just shared with the board an accurate description of the revisions that your office caused to be made to the plans when they were submitted on March 22nd?
Yes, that's correct.
I thank you for that efficiency. I would also want to point out that in the staff report from Mr. Bucko that we received dated April 23rd, and we're grateful that we had the opportunity to receive it in advance. It gave us all on our team an opportunity to go through it and be prepared. I note that almost every issue is marked as addressed. I noted that there were 4 that were indicated partially addressed. If I may, Mr. Pucci, one of the partially addressed was the choice of ash, whether it was red or green as a tree on site, was found not to be acceptable. I had asked that you find alternatives and present them to Mr. Bucko. What are the alternative trees that you've identified in lieu of ash?
I suggested either a pin oak or a black gum and communicated that to Mr. Bucko yesterday.
So we would ask that that substitution be acceptable to the board. Of course, it would have to be acceptable to Mr. Bucko.
And that's correct, Mr. Chairman. I did receive a letter report from Mr. Pucci, May 4th, outlining that that's one of the issues that had to be addressed, and the substitute of the pin oak is acceptable. All right, the ash would have had some infestation, especially in this area where the pin oak is a hardier tree and has a better rate of survival. So yes, it's acceptable.
I agree with that.
Okay. A somewhat related point, and this is on page 13 of Mr. Bucko's report under tree removal plan. We had provided testimony indicating that we were requesting a waiver of preparing a woodland retention and preservation plan. We had indicated that the areas in the conservation easement were going to be preserved, and there would be a very substantial re-landscaping of the plan. We had requested an exemption. We had put the testimony on the record. I would ask if Mr. Bucko could comment as to whether this request is one that he is comfortable with, or whether further testimony is required.
No, I mean, Mr. Chairman, it really isn't, because we looked at that, and when we did look at that, the DEP permit in the riparian zone, which the waiver that they're asking for, it's already landscaped. It's an overlap. So the landscaping would be addressed in that forum. So I don't have a problem with the board granting that waiver.
Okay, so this would be a waiver, and okay, and this is item 9A in your letter.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Again, since the landscaping has already been addressed in the riparian.
And the woodland plan business is, to my mind, I'm familiar with that requirement. It's overkill for this property. And what you're doing is addressing the full landscaping of the entire property. And
correct.
That's what's appropriate.
Well, that's what we're doing, and that's why we don't have an issue with the woodland retention and preservation plan.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. There is also a partially addressed comment indicating, this is on page 16 at the bottom in paragraph 7, stating the applicant has an obligation to deliver the NJDEP flood hazard applicability determination. We're pleased to tell you that has been received in the last 24 hours, and we'll get it into your possession promptly.
That'll be great. Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. There are, I believe that the only other items that are listed as partially addressed would appear under the category of traffic. And I'm going to ask that Mr. Ray rejoin us shortly to address those. But I would turn, Mr. Bucko, other than those comments that we just made and the revisions to the plan, Are there any outstanding engineering questions for Mr. Pucci?
No, not any questions, just to let the board know that if they act favorably, that there will be bonding and there will be sewer connection fees and things of that nature. But other than that, they've adequately addressed all of my engineering comments.
I thank you for that comment.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I did not intend to go any further with Mr. Pucci, especially after Mr. Bucko's comments. I did intend to call Mr. Ray briefly just to clarify some testimony that was placed on the record at the last hearing. And then before we went to Mr. Testa, the architect, I would, with permission, ask if I could recall Mr. Silva just to do a summary of the environmental improvements, and now that the flood hazard certification is in hand, just to bring it, to tie it all together. So,
Okay, before, I think your plan is fine. Just before doing that, as we complete the engineering aspect of this, I'd just like to ask if any board members have any questions about the engineering aspects that have just been discussed.
No.
Seeing none, go ahead, Mr. Pegg.
Right. It's wonderful when Mr. Plousis is your engineer. Mr. Ray is our traffic expert. He had testified, and at the conclusion of his testimony, Mr. Jar, your traffic expert, had commented on his testimony. There were two points that perhaps we didn't make sufficiently clear. And I'd ask if we could have Mr. Ray, who is under oath and whose credentials as a traffic engineer are on the record. I'm going to ask if Mr. Ray could just assist me in addressing a couple of comments. Mr. Ray, good evening.
Good evening. I hope I'm unmuted.
You're unmuted.
Go ahead.
You're unmuted.
Okay.
One of the questions that was raised in Mr. Bucko's report was a suggestion that the engineer redo the traffic counts to confirm afternoon data by doing a recount in the afternoon period during a typical weekday. It's my understanding that was completed. I'd ask if you could just speak to that point on the record.
Yeah, it was, but in having taken a second look at the question that was raised, actually the afternoon counts were done on a Thursday afternoon. And I think Mr. Jar and Mr. Bucko have looked at that data and they agree that the Thursday afternoon counts that we originally did for the original traffic study are appropriate. They weren't done on a Friday, they were actually done on a Thursday. And the question was, they should be done on either a Tuesday, Wednesday, or a Thursday, and they were done on a Thursday afternoon. So I think we've addressed that.
Okay. And then Mr. Bucko or Mr. Jar, is that an acceptable response?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. And there was one other comment in the traffic that I think could use some clarification. You, and I'm now on page 22 of the report in paragraph 6, where there was some testimony, or in your report, you talked about a 1-year build out and a 3-year build out. And there was a request that additional explanation on the analysis that you performed to calculate what those build outs would be.
Correct.
If you could speak to that.
And my response was, in a case like this, where should we gain our approvals from the zoning board and perfect the approvals, it's my opinion that these types of improvements to the property can be constructed and the project can open within 1 year. It's a little bit different than, for example, a residential project where you might have, 25 or 30 homes or townhomes that need to be constructed and sold. This is a relatively simple construction timeframe. Should we get our approvals, and the site can be up and running within a year of receiving our approvals.
Mr. Bucko and Mr. Jar, those were the two items that I saw as open under the purview of Mr. Ray's testimony. I would ask, is there anything further that you wish to hear from Mr. Ray, or is his testimony now complete?
I think he's covered all of our comments and questions adequately.
Thank you. Thank you.
I
very
would open it up that the board had any questions of that as well.
Thank you.
I had one question with regard, I'm not sure if this falls quite in that domain. With regard to the, one part of the new submission was a bunch of turning drawings. Should that be addressed now, or is that a different person?
No,
No, it's right now.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
I had indicated they had been done, and Mr. Pucci confirmed his office prepared them. But I think asking Mr. Ray to confirm what they demonstrate would be terrific.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Ray, because then I have a question about.
Share?
Yes. The revised plans that have been prepared by Mr. Plousis and Mr. Pucci show the turning radius templates for 6 different design vehicles, which is a lot more than we normally do. For the fuel delivery truck, for a WB50 trailer that might be making deliveries to the 7-Eleven, for a single unit truck with a 40-foot wheelbase, for a refuse removal truck, for an ambulance turning radius plan, and last one, the 6th one, is a fire truck turning plan. So 6 different turning radius plans have been prepared by Mr. Plousis and Mr. Pucci. They are both professional engineers. I've worked with them for 25, 30 years. I believe they've been prepared professionally and properly, and they show that the trucks can circulate on the site.
Okay. I'm not a traffic person. I haven't dealt with these, but one thing that struck me is, if I'm reading the drawings correctly, all of those drawings depict a vehicle, truck, or whatever, fire engine, coming from Middle Road, coming from the west, the east, Palmer Avenue toward Laurel, and then turning into the site. Now,
Actually, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Blumenthal.
yeah, now, obviously, various vehicles can come from any of a variety of directions. However, in the case of Holmdel, it is most likely that emergency equipment coming from Holmdel, whether it's from the Holmdel Firehouse, the first aid people, those to me, would be coming up Laurel Avenue from Route 35. So that would present a different set of turning circumstances.
I agree with you, Mr. Blumenthal, but that would actually be easier, because if the emergency vehicles were coming up from Route 35 on South Laurel Avenue, they would make a right turn onto Middle Road, and then they would make a left turn into the driveway on Middle Road, which is an easier move to make than the right turn because of the radii. And so I think what Mr. Pucci and Mr. Plousis have done is shown you a worst case scenario. So I agree with you, but that's my answer. And the other thing I would say is, in looking at least 3 of the 6 turning radius plans, they do show, for example, the fuel delivery truck coming down South Laurel Avenue from Route 36 and making a left turn into the South Laurel Avenue driveway in order to position themselves over the fuel tanks. So it's a combination of both roads, but I think they've probably looked at a worst case scenario.
Let me ask here, Dimitri, would you agree with what was just stated? You're muted.
I was unmuted. Yeah, as a driver of the ambulance, I looked at that myself to see which way I would come in. And it really depends on traffic. And I would say that it'd probably be better that I would be coming in Laurel Avenue, but I just don't know how I would turn in that one spot where that island is sticking out. So, I mean, I can't speak for the fire department with their engines, but I think I could make it either way, either entrance, I could probably come in and drive through that.
Okay, so in short, they have, what Mr. Ray is saying, they have tried to look at the worst case situation, and it they appear to have appropriately addressed it.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, and I know this is not directly on point, but it's salient, the fire official, David Olson, in his March 31 letter indicated not only that fire hydrants were adequate, but that the fire lanes and the fire zones were adequate in number and in location on the site. So this was reviewed by your fire official.
Okay, I haven't seen that letter, but thank you for that information.
Yeah, Loretta was good enough to get all these letters to us some time ago.
You want to continue?
I do, but is the board's examination of Mr. Ray concluded?
Yeah, do any board members have any other questions on this aspect of the presentation?
I have one. The new data that you collected was done now, and obviously due to COVID, we have a dramatically decreased amount of traffic on the roads during school. So don't you think that the data that you've collected is flawed in that way?
Actually, the data was collected in September of 2019, so it was pre-COVID.
So that data, I thought you did more data collection now.
We did, but it was before the COVID shutdown. So I know that for a fact, but and basically the September 2019 counts that we conducted, which are part of the original traffic study, were the higher traffic counts. So we continue to use them.
All right, because you just referenced new data. So I thought you had collected new data more recently than that.
We did, but let me back up. There was a little bit of confusion on my part because of what was in the review letter from Mr. Bucko's office. They specifically mentioned Friday afternoon counts should not be taken and used for the analysis. And we agree with that. But as I've indicated, the counts were actually done, the afternoon counts were actually done on a Thursday in September of 2019.
Okay.
And although we did redo the traffic counts as they requested us to do, there was no reason for us to redo the traffic counts because they were collected on a Thursday and not a Friday. And what I can tell you is the second set of traffic counts that we conducted were lower than the September 2019 counts that we used in the analysis. So I believe everything remains valid. There's absolutely no issue with this whatsoever.
Mr. Jar, Mr. Bucko?
I really had no reason to redo the traffic counts, but I redid them anyway, just to be perfectly 100% responsive to their comment.
But you redid them. So the lower numbers that you redid were redone in the last year or 15 months during COVID.
They were not, they were done before the COVID shutdown, but they were still lower.
Okay.
We reviewed the counts that were used for the analysis, which is what's critical, and we compared them to some other data points that NJDOT has nearby. Their data was spot on, and we find it acceptable. Our concern was with regard to the Thursday, Friday, and that's since been clarified. I think part of this might be a little confusion is that the actual data that was used really isn't new. It's from 2019, right, Mr. Ray?
Correct.
And that is the primary data set which we use for our review and comment on their report. And we find their analysis to be accurate and within very reasonable limits.
Thank you, Mr. Char.
Okay.
I'm not very clear about this. I see that the traffic would be the biggest, aspect, the traffic changes. So the report shows us how many vehicles were there on a certain day. And now we need to see whether with the gas station, there would be an increase, how much more traffic would be added and would that be inconvenient? So how did we do that? I mean, Mr. Jar looked at the possibility of increased traffic and we think there's more room. I'm not very clear about it. We have the analysis of the traffic and how do we extrapolate it to see if the increased traffic would be a burden or not?
I can testify to that. At the first meeting, I testified in detail regarding that issue, but I'll go over it again in a little bit less detail, perhaps this time. That's exactly what we did in our October 7th, 2019 traffic study. We projected the traffic volumes that the gas station and the convenience store will generate, and we surcharged those traffic volumes through the intersection, and we reanalyzed the intersection, and we found that it would have a minimal impact on the conditions at the intersection during the morning and afternoon peak hours. And one of the big reasons why it will have a minimal impact is because these types of facilities generate 75% of the driveway movements onto and off the property are pass-by traffic volumes that are on the road already. And if you just think about your own experience when you purchase gas or you go into a convenience store to make a purchase, more often than not, it's a convenient type situation for you. You like to try to make a right in out, a right into the site and a right out. And we expect, and this is based on Institute of Transportation Engineers data, which has been confirmed and accepted by the NJDOT, 75% of the traffic generated by this site during morning and afternoon peak hours is already on Middle Road and South Laurel Avenue, and it's just being diverted into the site. But to make the story as short as I can, this is exactly where a facility like this should be located, at the intersection of two busy county roads, because the traffic is already there. So we did look at all of that, and thank you for your question.
If I may, and also we submitted it to Mr. Jar for his review and comment. I would not want to speak for another professional. The record will reflect that he did accept the analysis. So, Mr. Jar, I don't mean to be.
I have a comment or question. When the study was done, you mentioned September. I'm not sure, with the summer months, does traffic increase during that time? Because people come into the shore over there. That's number one. And the other thing is, did the traffic study take into consideration future development around that corner there? Because if I'm not mistaken, there is a major development being considered that would go there that might increase the traffic. And my third thing was, I thought I heard earlier that no diesel will be now sold there, because I just can't imagine trucks coming in and out of that gas station on Middle Road. That intersection is horrendous already.
I can do the diesel question, and then the rest is for Mr. Ray. We had indicated that we would post signage that said that over-the-road trucks could not fuel on site, and we would control that by using the 1-inch diameter fueling pump, as opposed to the 2.5-inch diameter fueling pump that the over-the-road trucks use. And we would, so there's diesel available to people who operate small vehicles and who can handle the fuel from a 1-inch pump.
Okay.
And to answer the first two parts of your question, ma'am, you're correct about summer volumes on Route 36 heading to Sandy Hook. There is a seasonal adjustment that would be required for Route 36 east-west volumes coming off the Parkway, heading to Sandy Hook and heading down towards Seabright and Monmouth Beach in those areas. But Middle Road and South Laurel Avenue, if you check the NJDOT's website, they don't have a heavy seasonal adjustment that needs to be made. They're not recreational roads like Route 36 is. And we felt it was more important, and I'll stand by our analysis, that we wanted to wait for schools to open in September because we wanted the school traffic to be included in the analysis. And I think we've got the peak month in terms of traffic volume at Middle Road and South Laurel Avenue. And just to add to what Mr. Pape just said, we've done so many of these facilities across the state. The over-the-road trucks will not stop here, will not even try to stop here to buy diesel because of the smaller hoses and the low speed that the diesel fuel will be dispensed into those big trucks. It would take them 45 minutes to fill up at this facility. They need to go to a truck stop where they have the high-speed diesel hoses. So I understand your concerns. They're legitimate. We have addressed them, I believe.
And about future development at that site?
Oh, yes, and we also added background traffic growth into our analysis. So that was taken into account. We like the extra traffic. We want, that's going to be more
business, right?
Yes.
And Mr. Jar had reviewed and commented on all of that at the February meeting.
And again, just to reiterate what, what it really all comes down to as far as my testimony, this facility is going to draw so much of its traffic from the existing traffic flow on South Laurel Avenue and Middle Road. This is exactly where a facility like this belongs at two busy county roads where they intersect, rather than back into a residential neighborhood somewhere. This is a proper location for it. I firmly believe that.
Except it doesn't take into consideration what the in and out traffic does to the existing roadway, Mr. Ray. I mean, I said this at the last time, is that you were also the witness for the Gulf Station on Bethany Road.
Right.
And that road couldn't be a bigger nightmare.
Well, the Gulf Station, if you were to go out there and look at that Gulf Station, I did testify on that. Go out there and take a second look at the traffic entering and exiting that Gulf Station. You will see that it's doing so safely and efficiently. I've been out there after the project was completed, and traffic's getting into and out of that site safely and efficiently. And I think I testified to that at the last meeting. So all I can say is I respectfully disagree.
Well, I live by that intersection, Mr. Ray, and I see lots and lots of near miss accidents in that intersection.
We see near misses all the time, but you don't see accidents. I'll stand firmly by my testimony.
Well, you can. I strongly disagree.
Thank you.
Is there anything further of Mr. Ray?
The only thing I'd like to add is, we had extensive testimony at the last meeting on this, and I just want to make sure that, because I agree with the board members that traffic is a significant concern for the site. We had mentioned that in our memos all along. The analysis that was prepared, the engineering work that went into this, all right, is sound, and we concur with the analysis that Mr. Ray provided. He's answered all of our questions. He's been extraordinarily cooperative. We have made sure that we have checked this to every extent we can. I would like to stress, please bear in mind, this type of use is that pass by. It's people aren't going to mean the traffic there is very, very congested. I agree with everyone. There's your concerns are not falling on deaf ears. We totally understand that. And Mr. Ray has worked with us, and we have done to the greatest extent possible an analysis to be certain that by making this improvement at this location, it's not going to be a detriment to traffic. So I want to assure the board members that at least from the engineering perspective, the analysis, we've done everything we possibly can to make certain that this will not be a detriment to the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Mr. Jar, what are your qualifications? I'm sorry, it's hard to keep track of who everyone is. Can you remind me who you are, what your position is?
I'm the board's traffic consultant. I work for the board.
He works with Mr. Bucko.
Yeah, I have a problem with what's happening, but I'm going to have to take this up outside of a public hearing. So you're basically sitting here advocating for an applicant. I think that's completely unprofessional and wrong. That's our decision to make as a board. You shouldn't be sitting here giving us that opinion.
Shame on you for being honest, John.
It's not his job. It's our job to come to a conclusion, and it's our experts' jobs to give us the facts to do that, not to draw conclusions of their own. That's completely not his job.
I'm not sure what conclusion I'm drawing. I'm trying to be, and always, my primary goal here is to protect the town to every length possible. And my goal here is to review the analysis provided by the applicants, to be certain that the engineering that they provided to the board and the reports that you're reading is accurate and provide you with the necessary information you need to have in order to make an intelligent and well thought through decision. I'm only trying to give you my experience and 30 years of it in doing this to help to guide you of just the facts involved. I have no opinion whether this application should be approved or denied. My opinion is only with regard to the facts that are presented. And what I'm presenting to you is that my review. I reviewed the information, Mr. Ray. I questioned him extensively with regard to the data that he gave us. I made certain that that data was correct. I checked DOT numbers. I've done the very best due diligence I can to protect our community. That's what and to share that with you. I totally understand your concern about that intersection. I've gone out there, I've looked at it, and I expressed those concerns in my memorandum as well. That, you know, we're concerned about it's a very, very busy intersection, and we certainly do have concerns that revolved about an application of this nature. But the engineering indicates that it will be within reasonable guidelines and limits.
And I appreciate you giving us your thoughts, but now you at the end, you started to give us your opinion that it was appropriate, and that's not your job. That's our job.
I agree. As far as appropriateness is not my place. Just the facts of the engineering. The engineering facts indicate that the driveways will work as indicated in Mr. Ray's report. If I have misstated, I apologize.
Okay.
Mr. Ray's report's facts are accurate.
Not to belabor this point, but I just want to get this out. I don't remember I'm sorry if I didn't, wasn't aware of all the reports that you generated before, but just based on this, the report that they've got a traffic analysis in September 2019. And then we're saying that most of the traffic that comes into the gas station will be pre-existing traffic, vehicles that are already there. It's a busy intersection, it's going to go. So then how did that report of 2019 September, how was it going to influence our decision? Meaning, if you already believe that the pre-existing traffic will go there, say the report showed X number, 2X number, 3X number, what difference would it make to us if we believe that it's not going to increase it anyway? So I'm just not clear about our extrapolation and our data, that's all.
Okay.
Hope I'm clear.
Well, I never said it wasn't going to increase traffic because 75% of the traffic, according to the IT studies, will be passed by traffic that's there already. That means that 25% of the traffic will be new traffic. So there will be an increase in traffic at the intersection, but it is going to be very minimal and it will have a very insignificant impact on an intersection, which has, if you give me 1 second.
So that's where the numbers come in. So based on those numbers, you said.
Let me try to finish to answer your question. If I'm not mistaken, to give you an example, during the afternoon peak hour, there were almost 2,000 cars going through that intersection in 1 hour during the afternoon peak hour.
Okay.
We're going to add about 20, 25 cars to the intersection. That's about 1%, a 1% impact. So that's what I'm trying to say. Most of the traffic that's going to come into the gas station and the convenience store, it's there already. The amount of new traffic that's going to be generated is going to be very minimal.
How did you come up with that number of that 25? That's all,
It's all industry standards. These are studies that have been made all across the country. They've been submitted to the Institute of Transportation Engineers in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
They've compiled the data. They've published it. I have 3 manuals in my office that are, each one is about this thick.
No, I don't disbelieve you. I just want to know as a layperson how you come about with these numbers.
It's engineering data that has been compiled all throughout the country, submitted to the ITE in Washington. They published the data. The NJDOT accepts the data. The Monmouth County Engineering Department accepts the data. These are our industry standards. That's how we do it.
Okay.
I have one last thing. I'm sorry to belabor the traffic, but that's the thing that concerns me the most about this project. Even if you were to say that the traffic would not increase at that intersection, that you're going to be using that. When somebody pulls into a station or out of it, that creates a situation for traffic. People flowing through an intersection is one thing. People stopping, making a turn, or trying to come out of that gas station and make a left to go onto the other side of the road, that can contribute to safety issues and congestion, even if there is no more traffic. No, I mean, like on Bethany Road, if that gas station wasn't there, the traffic would keep flowing. But it's not, because people are turning in and out of the gas station. And that's my concern, that at an intersection that's so congested already, we are now not making it flow through traffic. We're
And
making
it is,
people make
and it
turns.
is a legitimate concern, and I never said that it wasn't. But what we did at the very onset of this project, Mr. Palusis and myself sat down, we looked at the property, and if you look at where the existing curb cuts are to the property and how wide they are and where they're located, you will see that we have closed those existing curb cuts, which are wider and closer to the intersection, and we have moved them further away from the intersection and specifically design them to accommodate our traffic. So you are 100% correct about having concern about turning movements into and out of the driveways. And that is exactly why we have redesigned the site to narrow the driveways and push them further from the intersection. You're 100% right.
All right. Do any other board members have any questions about these witnesses and the traffic questions at this time? Seeing at the moment none, Mr. Pape, would you like to continue?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Chair, when we were last before you in February, Anthony Silva presented to you a summary of the environmental constraints, and he also went through the environmental benefits and improvements that would be made to this property. And only because that was a few months ago, and because the flood hazard determination is now in place, I've asked if Mr. Silva could give us an executive summary of those environmental constraints, and if he could also take us through the environmental improvements that are created by this project. With your permission, he'll be brief and just do a restatement.
Fine. Go ahead, Mr. Silva.
Mr. Silva, I remind you that you're under oath, and board members, I remind you that Mr. Silva's credentials as an environmental scientist were shared with you on the record. And Mr. Silva, if you could take us through, the environmental constraints that are affecting the property. Perhaps a screen share at this time would be beneficial. Is Mr. Pucci empowered to screen share, or Loretta, do you screen share?
Well, either Loretta or Carrie, who's helping host this thing, can set that up.
Okay.
Who would you like, Mr. Pucci or Mr. Silva?
I already discussed it with Mr. Pucci, so I think he's best to do it.
Okay. So if we just have the appropriate plan that has the environmental constraints clear.
Oh, there he is.
We're going to ask.
The ability to share.
I do have the ability to share. I'll just ask Mr. Silva which plan he would like to see, a flood hazard plan or a site plan.
I believe the site plan should be fine.
Thank you.
Okay.
If you can focus maybe closer to the creek in the northern property boundary, maybe zoom in on that area.
Okay, I believe you will be looking now all at the site plan.
First page.
Correct. Yeah.
I just have to roll over to the actual site plan and now increase it so you can all see where you're looking for.
And center it.
Is that an appropriate area for you, Mr. Silva?
I believe that looks good, Mr. Pucci. Thank you. Yeah, thanks, board, for having me summarize again. As Ken explained, the flood hazard area determination was issued in the past 24 hours, which is great. Confirmed the state regulated riparian zone buffer of 50 feet, which our development has stayed out of. It established the extent of the 100-year floodplain, which we are also staying away from. My firm secured the wetlands letter of interpretation and transition area waiver in April of 2020. And the transition area waiver allows for the redevelopment of an existing impervious surface within a wetlands buffer. And that is only 58 square feet. It's just the tiny corner of the building. I'm not sure if I can actually see it on this site plan.
No.
Apologize, I'm on my cell phone, but just a little bit corner of the convenience stores in a buffer, which was authorized by the NJDEP. It also authorized the removal of approximately 5,500 square feet of impervious surface from the buffer, and that area is going to be replanted with native species and restored. And that in turn meets the intent of the township's stream corridor ordinance, which we're requesting a waiver from. We are increasing the width of the riparian buffer to the stream, which serves more protections for the stream itself and the adjacent riparian zone. We are also introducing stormwater water quality treatment measures, which currently don't exist on the site today. Currently, it's an impervious gravel parking lot that stores, automobiles in various states of disrepair. So there's a lot of runoff into the stream currently. This project's going to provide for water quality treatment. So in addition to the plantings, those two enhancements are going to increase the protections for the stream and local area. And so basically the intent of the stream corridor ordinance is met with this project.
So we have a summary. We're mindful of and respectful of the wetlands and their buffers. We're mindful of and respectful of the stream corridor buffer. We're mindful of and respectful of the flood hazard elements of our property. And we are introducing a stormwater management system that is, as we indicated earlier, is consistent with the 2021 requirements and replaces a stormwater system that's currently non-existent. And I believe that you concluded the last time that the water quality in the stream would be substantially improved, and that all of these improvements together would create a wildlife habitat. And I think we even called it a wildlife corridor because it followed the stream. Mr. Silva, an accurate summary?
Yes, Ken, very much.
Okay. Mr. Chair and board members, I have nothing further of Mr. Silva. The only thing that was new this evening was to introduce the securing of the flood hazard determination, and then just to do a brief overview of the benefits, that the environmental benefits that are derived if this plan were to be implemented.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, if you recall, my concern was the latest permit, that their latest approval that they just received. My concern was that if that line had shifted significantly, that there may have had to have been a redesign of the site, but they've testified that the line is virtually the same and will not change the design of and layout of the site. So once I receive that, then I can comment further on my review letters.
Thank you.
All right, do any board members have any questions about the environmental concerns and the buffers for Mr. Silva? This time. Seeing none. Okay.
Thank you.
Babe?
Surely. Just two minor pieces of housekeeping. The Holmdel Township police officers report indicated that they had no comments. The construction officials similarly indicated no comments. So those were reports that were received during the month of March. Mr. Michael Testa is our architect. He's designed the building and he's prepared to present that building to you. If we could begin. I don't, Mr. Testa, I don't believe your credentials were placed on the record last month.
No, I don't think so either, Ken. Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Testa, T-E-S-T-A, registered architect in the state of New Jersey, graduate of the New Jersey Institute of Technology in 1991, Bachelor of Architecture, licensed in the state of New Jersey, and have been in good standing since 1996, and developed the architectural firm Michael V. Testa Architect 2002, and have been president and principal architect since then, located in Manalapan, New Jersey. I have testified in various municipalities across the state. This is actually my first time in front of the Holmdel Township, and would appreciate acceptance of credentials.
Any board members have any questions about Mr. Testa's credentials? Seeing none, we'll accept his credentials. Please go ahead with your testimony.
Great, thank you. Ms. Kosha, is it possible to screen share so I could pull my drawings up?
You're muted, Loretta.
You have ability to share.
Thank you very much. Okay, what I have in front of everyone is the set of drawings, the plans and elevations that were submitted to the board for review. The sheet up in front of you right now is the floor plan sheet PB1. And what this shows everyone is that
just hold a second. Has that been recorded as a submission, Mr. Marty or Loretta?
Yeah, Loretta needs to let us know. I'm not sure.
I don't think we've had this presented before.
Is it on the website, Loretta? Or you don't think it's on the website?
I'm not sure. Mr. Testa, did I receive this or the board members?
Yes, I have received it. I have it in front of me.
Oh, you do? Okay, so we do have it.
This was on the website.
This is from the submission packet.
Okay.
Okay, so then it doesn't have to be marked then. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No worries, thank you very much. Again, as indicated, the plan, what you have in front of you is the floor plan. We are presenting to you a brand new convenience store that is 3,000 square feet. It's a typical convenience store where the bottom of the plan is facing Middle Road, where the main entrance is facing the pumps, and a side entrance on Laurel Road, where we have the additional parking on that area. Also, the board had requested a layout of rooftop equipment, and that would be on sheet PB2 to give you an idea of 2 larger rooftop units and some smaller condenser units placed towards the back end of the area here. All of the equipment, as you can see in the elevation, is concealed by parapets. We have parapets on all 4 sides of the building. The building height to the top of the parapet is 18 feet. And to the roof, we have 14 feet 7. So at its lowest point, or the shortest height of the parapet is 3'5". So it definitely covers and conceals and shields all rooftop equipment. And again, that is on all 4 sides of the building. As you can see in the elevations, we have upgraded decorative materials as far as block on the base of the building and brick up above on all 4 sides. We have a small storefront area that allows natural light and visibility into the store, as well as a canopy that extends over the front entrance area for shelter while people are waiting to go in, coming out into the space. We have the 2 side doors facing Laurel. One of the doors is for utilities, the other one's an egress door out the back. And then the rear wall we have over here, some utility electrical panels, some scuppers that the drains are concealed. They'll be discharged and connected to the underside of, the underground storm system. On the site, we also have on sheet PB6, the gas pump canopies. The top of the canopy we have at 18 feet at the top, and we have clear underneath 15 feet to the underside. The materials on all of the columns are the same materials as the building, and we were asked last time to include a small kiosk structure, which we have done. The canopy material itself, the upper portion, is metallic material with a fiberglass cornice to decorate and finish the top edge of the canopy. We have 2 signs shown on the corners here and here. And we have a small monument sign that's 6'1" tall by 6'5" across. There's a small 9-inch masonry base, again, the same material as the building base, It will be internally illuminated. I'd like to share the color renderings. Go over materials. Can everyone see? I'm sorry. Okay, great. So we have here is basically the same building elevations that were shown in black and white previously that now have color and material. We've selected a material that is durable and we felt it would look nice and blend into the environment. We feel that we're using soft earth tones. We have light beiges, whites, and cream colors, and that's consistent again on all four sides of the building. You could see the glass storefront where we talked about visibility. And Ms. Keller had brought up a question regarding the size of the signage on the building. The sign that we show here is 5'5", but that is not going to be, we're going to look to comply with the ordinance, which is 10% of the building area, which is about 15 square feet of signage. So we're looking to comply with the township ordinance with a wall-mounted, internally illuminated sign. We have a small area here where you have a roof access ladder to get up and service equipment. And again, equipment will be concealed on all four sides of the building. The pump images, again, in keeping with what the building image with soft earth tones with beige brick, a cream colored block at the base, and a white cornice along the top, again, consistent with the building. Same with the material for the small monument sign. And that would basically conclude my overview of the building and the canopy on the site.
And Mr. Chair, members of the board, I can share with you, having done close to 30 of these applications with Felix Brusilovsky, that one of his signatures is that the canopies are always fully designed. The architect designs them so that they're not bare pylons or unadorned signage. You'll see that there's a cornice on it that matches the building, and all of the materials and colors on the building are brought out to the canopy and similarly to the sign. Mr. Testa, I know that there are other color options that are available if the board does not find the color scheme to be in agreement, but we would ask at this time, we ask for the board's comments on the architectural plans as presented.
Hey, Ralph, I'd like to jump in.
Go ahead, Dimitri.
Basically, I think that building looks unfit to be on that corner the way it looks. It does not look like a hometown corner type building. It looks like something that I would see on 35 with other commercial buildings. I think there are other drawings that you mentioned that I'm looking at that look a little bit more like the neighborhood bank across the street and more in line with that, rather than looking like this belongs in the commons. So I know people have their different peeves, but I have appearance is very important to me, a little less than traffic. And I haven't said anything during that segment, but to me, this building should not look like that on that corner. It'll take away from the feel of that neighborhood.
Well,
So
Mr.
I would,
Testa, would you want to discuss some of the alternates that were in one of the sets of plans?
Yes, that's fine. And thank you very much for your comment. And again, it's subjective, and we want to put a building on this corner that is reflective of the township of Holmdel. So that's why we created alternate elevations. We have an elevation here in keeping more with a residential style building. It's a horizontal hardy plank material. You can see a cultured stone base, a dark framed glass, a cornice that has corbels, a belt band of a painted belt band of a hardy plank board. And again, that will be continued on all four sides of the building, same as the brick building. In keeping with Mr. Brusilovsky's design requirements for the canopies again reflect the architecture of the building with cultured stone base and columns with some detailed trim, cornice, and so forth across the top. Alternate number 3 has a little more color involved with the look. We broke up the roof materials to kind of give it some variation in form. Again, you can see the asphalt shingles across here. We still maintain the canopy over all designs and in 2 different color tones of hardy plank with a reddish colored brick along the bottom, and again, utilized at the main canopy. And in our last image is going to be all red brick with some hardy plank, or it could be a stucco in the center with a asphalt shingled mansard. So those are the additional renderings that we wanted to prepare and show the board for consideration as to what they may feel is acceptable. We were trying to present a building that blended in with the site as well as the community. So we thought the initial one was as subtle of an image that would blend in, but I do understand where you're coming from. It does look like a Route 35 building, even though it does look like a very nice building. These other buildings have more residential architectural treatments, such as the hardy plank, brick, and cultured stone. So it would really, feedback from the board is welcome as to which direction, or if that could be something that we could resolve and come to terms with those final materials, I guess with the board prior or after the meeting.
Ralph, I'd like to follow up on that presentation.
Go ahead.
My concern is I understand what you think looks nice. What I'm concerned about, what looks right on that corner. There's nothing around on each of those corners there. You have residential homes. They certainly don't look like that. You have a corner with a dance studio. It does not look like that. And you have a bank across the street, and it does not look like that. So this would look totally, break up that corner into something different. So if we're going to do anything, it would have to be that other view you had that had the roof lines on both sides. I don't know what number it is. It doesn't say here on my plans. Something like that would look more like in line with a residential / commercial type of building. If you look at the bank across the street, and I don't know if you went to that corner and looked at it, it would look, the bank looks closer to that than the one that you recommend, the first one. So that's what my thing is. I'm looking at the neighborhood, and that's where my decision, I'm not looking what I think looks nice if I wanted to do it. I'm looking what looks well in that neighborhood. And I think that's what we all have to focus on. We don't want this to look different than all the other buildings.
Absolutely, I agree. So we definitely welcome any kind of feedback, such as the residential roof, the mansard roof, wrapping all four sides. We looked at the option of having a sloped roof. The sloped roof runs a problem with respect to the rooftop equipment. The equipment needed to run the facility. In order to do that, we'd have to carve out a large chunk of the rear roof, and again, more or less have an unsightly appearance on the one facade. So the mansard roof gives you the element of residential roof, and if we could maintain that element, I think that could be successful as part of the design for this building.
Well, whatever elevation this is the one that I would vote on as looking more like a residential store / commercial building. And I mean, I'm open to hear what the rest of the board, if the rest of the board has been to that neighborhood and seen the four corners and is aware of what type of buildings are there.
Comments from anyone? Was that Francine? You're muted.
Fix it. I'm agreeing with Demetrius. Can have a great building, but if it doesn't fit in the neighborhood, I think we have to be very cognizant of making it more fit in line with the neighborhood there. So this one that's up right now would be my choice.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could make a comment too.
Go ahead, Kate.
So I didn't really comment on the architecture in my letter because I was curious to, see this presentation and see what the different alternatives were about. But, I think that first of all, for the board's consideration, the applicant is here before the zoning board because the convenience store is what requires a use variance. The gas station is, it's conditional use, they meet the conditions, but I think that, the board is well within their rights to consider what this convenience store itself will look like in this corner and how it will reflect upon the neighborhood. So, I think that, again, it's up to the board which of these designs, but I think that this is a substantial improvement over the basic first design that was shown, just in terms of how it fits into the setting. And the other thing I would say is that, that we understand that the rear of the building will back up to the stream corridor, but the Laurel Ave side of the building will be pretty visible from the street. I know that there's parking there, but it is just going to be a sidewalk, and the reason that those spots were made employee parking is because it's just right in there. It's just, for example, Mr. Testa, in an elevation like this, would that mansard style roof kind of extend to the other side? Would that be possible? Just because I think that, that's even if it's not that in particular, I think that, it might be helpful to have some kind of treatment on that Laurel Avenue side as well.
Well, we anticipate wrapping like we did the other material all the way around the building. So that mansard would wrap on all four sides of the building. Just having a break in the center at the front entrance, so just to be no entry in the building, so you could pick that out quickly as to where we're going when we get out of our car. But yes, we would maintain that mansard roof on all of the other three sides.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's whatever the final decision is on terms of, if it's approved, if architecture is decided upon. I think that wrapping is important, especially on that side where there will not be the kind of thick buffers that are proposed to the rear and to the east. So, okay, thank you.
Mr. Testa, do you happen to have a picture of that gable roof with that overframe on the front? That you
I
can
do
show?
not. It's just something that, we didn't explore because of the complications with equipment. It doesn't really breathe well. It's not very durable. Having it up there, leaves and debris get trapped up on that flat section. So that's why we didn't present that to the board, because we didn't feel that it was a successful approach to the design of this type of structure.
Okay, I think these with the board member, what we're looking for, that would actually be more of what we're looking for in that area as far as a look for the building. I agree that leaves are usually become an issue, but to take that back out and put a sound attenuation fence across there for the equipment, it is the back of the building. I don't know that appearance, the facade is going to be much more important than that back part of the building there.
I think it would be helpful if we had a sketch of what the left end, which is the facing Laurel, would look like.
I think, didn't he say he would continue that appearance on the side too?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it would
all
look
the
the same thing
materials.
except without doors and windows.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yeah, there would be two service doors there, but
Right, but that's,
yeah, but I just wanted to make sure that, because, I think that we should avoid flat walls where possible when it faces the street like that, so.
I agree with that.
Yeah, this looks more like a house that would be in that neighborhood rather than a solid cement wall going up, or brick, or whatever that was, the first one.
Board members and Ms. Keller, how would you feel about the introduction of faux windows? We would prefer not to have unnecessary windows that create security issues, but the appearance of windows through architectural faux windows.
Especially on the left side.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it might be worth taking a look at it. I know that it's not a huge building, and there already are going to be the service doors there. I would leave that to, it's hard to just say, it's hard to compare the two without seeing them. Yeah, I mean, it just because how wide is it there? And there will be the doors, but if there would, I don't have an objection to that at all.
Yeah, whether it's some sort of trim or something, so that you're on the Laurel Avenue facing wall isn't just a blank wall.
Right, and the roof would go, the roof, between the roof and the water table, I think that would create a good look as well.
So some visual image, something to focus on, and perhaps some break in the facade, a little, so it's not a straight wall.
Yeah.
I have a comment, which is, am I muted again?
No, you're not.
Okay. And this might sound funny, but even the windows, I think if the windows were different, like a paned looking window, would add to make this building look totally different. and not make something, and I don't know if that's possible, but just giving some suggestions as to make it look more like it fits into a village rather than being on a highway someplace.
Window muttons could be incorporated into the glass where we between the glass.
Right.
Okay.
And I think, Ms. Camus, I think that that's what Mr. Pape is kind of referring to for the other side, because
Okay,
might be kind of a challenge with this, because you need to have a full storefront to a certain extent, but that's the kind of idea that we're looking at.
But the window inserts, as Mr. Testa indicated.
right,
are
right.
awesome.
I'm
Excellent,
just giving it as a suggestion to,
very valuable.
Very good.
When in Rome.
So is the rest of the board okay with this facade? I haven't heard any negative ones.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I like with all of them is that you were talking about hardy plank, which some people may not be familiar with it. It's a siding material, but it's made from concrete. So it's durable and you don't have to paint it every week, and it will be low maintenance and it should maintain its integrity for a long time.
Yeah, and all of Mr. Wrzlewski's locations are high quality exterior materials. First of all, they look nice, they last longer, and it's better across the board when you own the product from a maintenance standpoint. So it's in our best interest to provide a building that has materials that against a highway or a roadway can stand up to the elements and still continue to look good 5-10 years down the road.
This is Irfan here. I just have one comment. I agree with Dimitri that it has to blend into the surroundings. And I've been going to New York for 25 years, and every time a new building comes up, it looks a little trendier than the previous. So I would say that while ensuring that it blends in, it should look a little more progressive, trendier than looking like more 10 years behind. That's just my suggestion.
I don't know if we're going to need another hearing or not, but if we do, I would suggest that the architect go out there and stand in the corner and look at the bank across the street and look at the dance studio and look at the homes and see how his building is going to conform with those buildings.
So if I may, while I agree with Dimitri as far as the bank, I got to disagree a little bit with the dance studio. I think he should take a lesson off the bank also. I think that shopping center across is absolutely hideous, and I lived across the street from it for about a year. It's in serious need of some major updating. However, the bank, I think they did that in good taste. So if there's anything to make it match, I would say it would be that. Certainly not the dance studio. I mean, that would be going way back in time.
Yeah, well, the bank at this point, I think, is probably close to 15 years old.
Yeah. But still, aesthetically, the bank is pleasing on the eyes. The dance studio is a step away from being condemned, if you ask me.
And the garage that's on this site now is worse yet.
I agree.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that when it comes to architecture, we've got some work to do. I'm not sure how we end up doing that. Perhaps if we continue with our next witness and before we conclude with some guidance, Mr. Chair, whether we come back with architecture or make commitments to the board, we can figure that out before the evening is over.
Yeah, well, we still have a little time this evening. I'm not sure how far we will get yet tonight. We do need to have time for public comment.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how long that will take or how many. We do have a number of people listening in, not a huge number. It's about 6, but current look. Why don't we move ahead and see how we do, if we do need to continue or not?
Surely. Mr.
And
Chairman.
we'll reassess then, and before we finish, we'll see what other suggestions that we have that maybe if we do need to continue.
Sure. Our intentions this evening are to present, the next witness is Felix Brusilowski, who is the principal of the company. And at the conclusion of Felix's testimony, all of our fact witnesses will have testified. And we then would like to present Christine Caffone, our planner, if time allows. So,
okay,
acceptable? Then, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Felix Brusilowski,
good.
who is your applicant. He has been sworn. We don't offer Mr. Brusilowski as an expert, although in his business, he certainly is an expert. I just would like to share with you his business acumen, what he has been doing over the past 40 years in this business, the number of businesses he operates, and then also to make some commitments on operations that the board could rely upon if they found it appropriate to incorporate into an approving resolution. So, Mr. Brusilowski, if you could just introduce yourself to the board and confirm that you are, in fact, the managing member of the New Horizon Properties, the applicant.
Good evening, everybody. I am the owner of New Horizon Properties. My name is Felix Brusilowski.
And Felix, all of the professionals working with you know this inside out. We've done so many of these applications around the state, at the top of the state, east side of the state, west side of the state, and all the way down south. How many service stations, convenience stores do you own and operate?
Over 30.
And I indicated you've been in this business for 40 years. An accurate statement?
42 to be exact, but yeah.
Where's the closest facility that you own and operate to this Holmdel site?
We have a location. The closest is Old Bridge, New Jersey, Route 9, which is branded 7-Eleven.
7-Eleven, and then it's a convenience with gas similar to this operation.
It is.
What are your proposed hours of operation?
24 hours.
So that's 3 shifts. You run 3 shifts around the clock.
Correct.
What are the number of employees that are required to run the operation? And if it changes during the shifts, if you could provide that for us.
Yes. In the evening, we have 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. We have 2 people per shift. Each 2 employees outdoors and 2 employees indoors. Thereafter, between 10 and 6 a.m., we have 1 person in the store and 1 person at the gas pumps.
And this is an operation, this is the type of operation that you have at your other facilities.
Yes.
And you find it to be adequate and safe for the employee?
Very, very much so.
And do you maintain a security system on the site and in the building?
We have cameras throughout the store and outside perimeter as well for security.
And are those cameras monitored?
They are recorded for, if I'm not mistaken, 10 days history on it. I'm connected, multiple people in our company that are connected to the site to see it at any given time. I find myself quite often on a couch watching TV and watching my phone of all the locations.
And if you could indicate, do you have a control over deliveries? And I'm going to ask, do you have a control over deliveries to the convenience store?
Yes, we do. We delegate to our delivery, to the companies that deliver to our facilities, the hours of deliveries. We do not want them to come in peak hours and interrupt our business.
So if this board were to require that there be no overnight deliveries and that there were no deliveries during peak hours, would you be comfortable accepting those conditions?
Not an issue. Absolutely could do that.
And with regard to fuel deliveries, I think that the board would find it interesting that you have your own fleet of fuel trucks. If you could just describe how the fuel deliveries occur and do you have control over those?
We dispatch the trucks ourselves inside our office. We have a dedicated person who does that. And each location, there's a note which hours of deliveries that are allowed. And that's how the scheduling is done.
And so again, if there were a requirement of the board that you limited the hours to non-peak hours and not overnight, is that something that you could handle with your?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And trash removal, you control trash removal?
Yes, because we do use a private trash removal company, which is Mazza, and they take care of quite a few of our locations, quite a few of our properties, and we could control them as well.
So the same testimony. If this board felt it was important to control the hours that trash removal vehicles came to the site to non-peak hours and not overnight hours, acceptable to your business?
Yes.
Yes, let's take these one at a time, Marty. Do you want to be a little more, think they need to be a little more specific for the sake of a resolution?
But the board should confirm that they do want that, and I would say the evening hours should be spelled out.
Board members, should we limit this as suggested?
Is the proposal that this would be open 24 hours for gas and for the convenience store?
Yes, the proposal.
Oh, that's a problem for me, big problem. That's a residential area. If you're gonna have that open 24/7, there, the other things in that area are not open with those kinds of hours.
Certainly the bank is not. And then I guess the bank is not, and then the dance studio across the street.
Nothing is over there, and then there's a lot of housing over there, so that's a issue. Forget the garbage. It's a huge issue to have that location open with lights and people in and out on a 24/7 basis. It's not a highway.
Other board members?
I agree with Valerie.
And I'll just note that everything on Bethany Road is over there is closed. Those gas stations on Bethany are closed by, I think, 9 o'clock, maybe even 8 o'clock, but 9 o'clock for certain, they're shut down.
I don't know if all of them are shut down there, but they're certainly not open overnight.
The gas stations close early because I've tried to go myself on occasions when they're closed. So I'm telling you, they close.
Even on Route 34, they're not open 24/7.
But at least that's a highway, Francine.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying even on a major roadway, they're not open 24/7. Why would we consider it
on Route 9 or on 35, it might be different.
Totally different what you do on a highway. We've got a huge condominium complex across the street from this. We've got houses, people live on that street. We heard last time from a gentleman who lives across the street from this. So you're gonna stick a 24/7 convenience store and gas station across the street from this guy's house? That's horrible. Think about it if that was your house. That's horrible.
Are there alternate proposals too, or does it have to be 24 hours?
We don't come to the table with anything with digging in our heels. 24/7 is the operation that takes place at almost every one of the facilities, including facilities that are similarly located. But I think it's something we would have to investigate. I know that there is a peak activity for service stations that occurs early in the morning, typically between 5 and 7 a.m. is a very, very important part. So we know that we would need to be open as early as 5 a.m. We could explore what the last hour is in the evening. There may be a separation of hours from the gas station and the convenience store. They do have separate demands. But I'm not prepared to do horse trading with you on that point now. I prefer to record your concerns, and perhaps during a break or perhaps at another hearing we'll continue.
Hey, I'd like to comment. I kind of agree with most of what Valerie's saying. We would have to investigate the times. I know for a fact that somebody I know takes the bus that's right on the corner there and gets dropped off there. And I mean, the bus he takes is early in the morning, so it would be probably convenient for him to have something open, 5, 6 a.m. so you can get a coffee or a donut. As far as, being open, let's say after 11 or even after 10, that's questionable for me too, whether you need somebody there those hours of the night. I'm sure people will have different opinions as to when it should open, but being that, and I'm not sure if the applicant is even aware of it, that the New Jersey, whatever the bus line is that goes into Manhattan,
Academy.
literally, what's that? Academy, they literally drop off on Laurel Avenue on one way when they drop off in the morning. I mean, when they pick up in the morning, they're on one side of the street, and when they're dropping off, they're on the gas station side of the street, and they'll probably stop just past the other driveway. So, you know, those people that are getting on the bus, it surely would be nice to have that available for them in the morning. At night, people, maybe they'll pick up a milk or something, but most people are home by 8 o'clock. So I don't know how late we would all agree on that it would close, but I certainly would agree with the 5 or 6 a.m. opening time.
Someone may want to check what the academy schedule actually is.
Oh, they're there that early.
Yeah, no, but and I don't know if it's seasonal also.
No,
It's not seasonal. It is not seasonal. The commuter bus runs down Middle Road all year round. And if I had to remember the last time, the last bus out is like 10 o'clock, but at night out of Port Authority. But I haven't done it in a while, so.
Anyway, that's
other questions or suggestions about limiting the hours?
I just have one question. Before deciding it to be open for 24 hours, did you do any market survey or demand analysis that the residents would need to buy stuff between 12 midnight and 6 a.m. that it would benefit them?
Absolutely. That's the reason why, believe me, we would not want to be open the hours that we're not doing business and paying labor and more electricity for nothing. People go out after 10 o'clock to do their food shopping, to get their fuel, or even to get some milk and eggs. Instead of running to the highway to a supermarket, they would rather use a local convenience store. So there's quite a bit of business. You'll be surprised.
Well, I definitely do not live around that area, but if it is for the convenience of the people who are living there and they would benefit.
Well, that's why we offer those hours, because of the residents that need our services. If they didn't need our services, we would not be open those hours, because it's just a waste of money. It's not smart business. We're very hands-on. We watch our sales with our software, the hours at all of our sites, and that's where we get all this from.
Is it possible for you to provide us with some sort of data that would show a similar, not in a highway or Route 35 type of environment? I mean, Old Bridge Route 9 is completely the opposite of this. So something similar to this, and I don't know what neighborhoods you're in, so I can't even think to compare something, but I would like to see some data that backs up what you're saying. I can't see people out 1, 2 o'clock in the morning in that neighborhood. I'm familiar with that neighborhood. My daughter lives down the block, so I'm there at least a couple of times a week. And I know pretty much after 10 o'clock, it's like a ghost town on Middle Road. So I'm not saying there won't be 1 or 2 people that might come and get milk or something in the middle of the night, but I can't see that there would be that much traffic at that time of night.
That was a question.
Just a follow-up question. If you realize that there is not enough business, would you reconsider the timing and hours after it is approved?
Sure. As I said before, we do not want to pay payroll, especially now we're going to $15 the minimum wage, which cuts into the economics quite hefty, because we're a penny business. We don't work on a large margin. So we need to watch our pennies. And if there's no business there, there's no sense of us being open those hours.
Kate, do we have any ordinances that control the hours like this? Do you know?
Not that I know of. A lot of those, they're generally not contained in the zoning ordinance. When a municipality does have those, they're usually contained within the police powers or something of that nature. And from what I can tell, I can't see anything in there. I might have missed something, but there's nothing in the zoning ordinance. But no matter what, the overarching ordinance would have to meet that. But I don't think there's anything in particular about
I feel
that.
like Hazlet has ordinances that control this. That it's come up before.
Yeah, it's it often, I mean, it's not often. Some towns do and some towns don't, but generally it's not always enforceable as a zoning activity because it kind of turns into more of a municipal control.
Okay.
Valerie, we've done 2 gas stations in the last couple of years, the one down on 520 and Holmdel Road. And then we, of course, had the one on Bethany and Holmdel Road. None of those did we have hours past, I don't even think, 10 and 11 o'clock.
That Gulf Station and the one in 520 are both closed early. So
Yeah.
Well, the Exxon closes very early because he sells over $3 a gallon right now. There's only one person working it, the store and the gas.
Yeah, on 5.
and that's
2
what
minutes away from them.
and that's what he was before he got the variance as well. But frankly, we had other issues.
Yeah,
Right.
my feeling is that we have some limitation on the hours, and that it's up to the rest of the board. I definitely don't think there's a need to be there 24 hours.
I live near the gas station on 520 and it does close, I think, around 11. And that's something the people wanted because even if you say, I don't care to have a convenience store to go get milk and eggs at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I think what instead you're going to do is attract people from outside of the residential area and the neighborhoods using that convenience store for their thing. And we don't want it. I don't want people saying, oh, if you go down on 520 or if you go where we're proposing now, he's open 24 hours. The people and the residents there don't want people from outside coming there because it creates noise, commotion. There has to be a respect for the people there. I don't think most of the people on Middle Road really care that they can get eggs at 2 o'clock in the morning. They can go to ShopRite for that matter.
That's right.
Can I propose a 5 a.m. to 10 p.m.?
Yeah.
Well,
That sounds very reasonable. Yeah.
Me too. I agree with that.
Well, I think I think the applicant indicated that they weren't prepared to make a final decision on this minute. Let's give them an opportunity to think about it, to potentially come back with some data from if they have a comparable location, and we'll go from there.
We could, and I can tell you that I just communicated with Mr. Brusilowski, and the 5 a.m. start is welcomed. We can handle that well. That gives us that morning commute that we so desperately need. We would ask that you reconsider the 10 to 11. We do have almost every location. We have business that continues solid to 11 o'clock at night. So if we did a 5 a.m. start and 11 conclusion, we would feel comfortable that the economics of the operation would be preserved.
Okay.
You have 24-hour gas stations in other residential areas in similar locations as Holmdel?
We could give you a list, and if I said this one is similar, every community is unique, and every community member sees their property in a unique way. I'm not going to hazard and say I think this one's the same, but we can show you. I mean, Mr. Brusilowski's facilities are all over the state, and there are quite a number in Middlesex and Monmouth County, and we can show you.
Okay.
If you can supply Loretta with a list, we can do a Google from our home here and look and see if it's similar locations. And then you bring us some statistics to show that you're getting that much business between the hours of 11 and 5. We'll think about it.
Can't ask for anything more than that. Mr. Brusilowski and I will work on that.
Okay. First of all, do board members have any other questions for Mr. Brusilowski and his testimony?
I guess the only other question is, I'm a little concerned that there's a park right across the street, and what kind of hangout we're going to start creating on that corner based on the location of a convenience store there. So is there any, what kind of goods are going to be sold in the convenience store in terms of what's going to be stocked there?
Just like any other convenience store, sandwiches, beverages, candy, gum, just a typical convenience store. Today's day and age convenience store.
Well, two items. Alcohol?
No, we're not allowed to sell alcohol at gas stations in New Jersey, sir.
Okay. Tobacco?
Yes.
Vaping paraphernalia?
To what's allowed by law.
I don't know. Are you allowed to sell vaping paraphernalia?
Certain vapes were allowed and certain were not. They were outlawed. So the ones that are still allowed by law, we reserve the right to sell them, yes. But we're not a smoke shop.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've made my points very clear. I just don't think this is the right location for this, so.
I also, but the ATM, does it have to have an ATM as well? Because that might also attract people who want just to use an ATM. So does it?
Every convenience store today has an ATM machine throughout the whole country.
People still use ATMs? Haven't we given that up and gone to Venmo now? I don't know.
Not yet.
Apple Pay, you name it, they use it. Bitcoins, they have ATM machines for that too now.
Oh my God.
I don't even understand how that works, but okay.
Me neither, but I've seen them. We don't have them, but I've seen them.
I have one more question. Do you know how far is the next 24 hours gas station from that location that you're proposing?
The highway.
Laurel Avenue and 35.
The highway.
So that would be like a mile or so.
Not even.
Yeah, that's another thing to think about, right? If there is a 24-hour gas station in a mile, what value does another one add in terms of convenience?
Both ways, probably 35 and 36 have 24-hour gas stations.
Well, I'm sure he considered that. He's a businessman.
I mean, I think the convenience of the new gas station would be a big improvement. Obviously, what's there is an eyesore now. So putting something else in there would definitely be an improvement. But I don't think the convenience store is well suited to that location. So.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just one. Will you be having the propane tanks?
Exchange.
The exchange propane tanks?
Mm-hmm. If it's, yeah.
You will?
Well, if it's permitted.
If it's permitted, yes.
Okay.
Isn't that another use?
We have done
It's retail.
this type of presentation. We've asked for the propane tank exchange. If you permit it, we'll have it. If you find it to be offensive, we won't do it. We don't fill. We just do the tank exchange from the locked cage.
Is that considered a different use?
Yes, I think when we had the Gulf, that was.
Gulf was
I
another
thought a
use.
different use, right?
Yeah,
And,
I thought so too. That's why I said it.
And they had the U-Haul as well.
Which is another use.
That's why I asked.
The U-Haul went away with the Gulf. That wasn't part of it. They have it, but they weren't going to have it with the new.
That's right.
With the convenience store, but the propane exchange was another use, right, Bob?
Yes, and the Gulf Station did withdraw the U-Haul rentals.
Right.
Because that was another use.
Right.
Yeah. It's treated differently across the state. You know, I recently have had an application where it was just kind of looked at as a retail use. I think that it is becoming, kind of standard, but if this board has treated it one way, then and if the applicant would have to put on testimony about that as well.
Marty, are you familiar with this? Would that be considered a use?
It was, I believe it was deemed, I'm not familiar with what our ordinance says, but I think it was a use for the Gulf application. I'm just.
We definitely treated it that way. I don't,
Yeah, I'm just looking quick.
the propane
Get back.
wall were each separate uses.
I guess that's something that, Kate and Marty should check into.
Yeah, I mean, U-Haul is that's a totally different story in terms of, just a completely separate operation.
And the space used.
Yeah, and I think in terms of looking at whether something's kind of accessory to the principal or its own principal use, you have to look at like whether it'll have the same employees, whether it will drive additional traffic to the site, et cetera. And that's all what's considered. So
Yeah, but that, I mean, even if it is another use, to me, that's something that would be beneficial to the neighbors there. They're doing a barbecue. They only have to go a mile to get to it rather than have to go all the way, to another location. I don't even know who has propane closest to that. So that one use that I would think would be good for that, for a neighborhood type of convenience store.
yeah, and the way I would look at this is that, this is an application where they're asking for a use variance to permit a convenience store. And so it's almost like a use variance to permit, it's just one of the conveniences offered. But, Marty and I can discuss that if the board, if the applicant wants to, add that to the application. Where's our storage or, or the outside storage cages or anything, were those shown on the plans anywhere?
Yeah, for the Gulf, we just required they put bollards in front of the cages. There was no, just quickly look back, there was no specific comment about a use. It just said that it was a use along with the convenience and the gas and the close to the U-Haul was withdrawn, so they withdrew that.
Are they required to be outside of the building?
Yeah.
Yeah. They generally, they're not filled on the site. They get the full ones there and they keep them in a cage outside, which is, in my experience, the public doesn't have access to this. But it's a staff member. It's just like any other type of retail transaction that occurs at the store. But I think that the location should definitely be shown on the plans, especially given the the rear buffer and the conservation and the environmental factors. So I would like to see where that would be proposed, and I think that would be screened in some way.
Well, exactly. And, some municipalities have a specific distance from the building that these exchange cages have to be located, and they have to be locked, and you have to go inside. You just can't drop them off and pick one up. So there's a few things that need to be looked at if they want to have the propane exchange.
Yeah, and in this case, I think because it is a use variance, that even though, first of all, for safety things, I think that's outside of my league. But the construction officials and Bob's office, et cetera, could make a judgment call on that. But then otherwise, because this is a use variance, I think that's the type of, otherwise for screening and location, that's the type of reasonable condition that the board could definitely impose.
Can we hear from the applicant where they were proposing to put the cage?
Wherever the professionals would like to have it, we are more than welcome to put it anywhere on the property that will be.
Okay, so I think, Bob needs to check with our construction officials to see exactly what Holmdel's requirements are.
Yeah, if we're going by appearance, we definitely don't want to see it in the front. And if you don't want to see
the left side,
that eliminates Laurel Avenue. So the only place that I see it going would be on the right side where the loading, no parking zone dumpsters are.
Yeah, and it looks like that there might be room behind that trash enclosure, which but that just not technically, but just looking at the site plan, that seems like a logical place for it.
Right.
But we would want to be able to review that after the fact. But I agree that does seem like the logical location. And that would also, make it very clear that it's not, for public availability.
Right, and if you don't want to put it up against the building, you could just put it on the opposite side there near the dumpsters and put a little piece of concrete and set it on there and you're done.
And a roof. Mr. Chair, board members, we have only one witness left to testify. If the board would allow, could we recess for 5 minutes or so? I would like to speak to Mr. Brusilowski offline before we return for the final witness.
Ralph, what time are you going to?
Yeah, this is.
Well, I think
late
it's a
already.
good time to take 9:15. I was thinking we normally would want to stop by 10.
10? That's quite a bit, Ralph.
Well, before 10. I mean, it's.
That's
I
the
think-
time we used to stop when the meeting started at 8 o'clock. We start at 7.
Right, we went to 7, not to go later, just to be more accommodating, so.
Yeah.
Well,
Really,
I'm used to
the idea
going
was a
3
meeting was
hours.
7 to 9, not 7 to 10.
Yeah, we never go past 9 o'clock. So we're
Well,
really-
that's news to me. But anyway, I think let's, Mr. Pape consult his client, and we at least need to get, I think there are some open issues here. What we need to at least go over the open issues then, so we get them all on the table so they have an opportunity to address them before the next hearing. We also need to have time for public comment, and then I don't know, do you want to do public before or after the planner?
As you direct, Mr. Chair, as you direct.
It's whatever's would be more effective.
Yeah. I think, if you ask me that question after my 5 minutes with Felix Brusilowski, I'll be.
Okay, let's take 5 minutes then, and we'll reconvene at 9:23.
Thank you. An off-the-record comment, Mr. Chair. I can remember in 1987 appearing before the Holmdel Township Planning Board. I was appearing on behalf of the Catholic Church, and the planning board went till 2:30 in the morning. And the physical pain of trying to function at 2:30 in the morning is something I have never forgotten. Why they didn't let us go home, I do not know.
Well, I'm totally comfortable with running, going till close to 10. I mean, not trying to, you need to draw a limit for physical and everything else sakes, but then also you don't need to have something take 10-minute meetings when you can do it in 5. Not that we hopefully get anywhere near that.
Mr. Flager probably knows this. It wasn't a decision, but in the dicta of a published decision years ago, there was a judge who said that any decision made by a planning board or zoning board after 12 midnight is de facto invalid. It wasn't the law. He was just commenting on this dicta.
Well, a few years back, when I was the chairman of the planning board, we all unanimously decided that we would go from 8 p.m. start time till 7 p.m. start time, and also end, instead of ending at 10 or 11, end by 9 o'clock. So we decided that. We've been following that since all the years I've been on these boards for over 20 years. And it's worked very well. And if something, at this time, we should have been all wrapped up and closed.
I'm used to 3-hour meetings. I have not heard of this 2-hour rule previously.
All right, well,
that's what we've done. And to be fair, as we're volunteers and some of us work and are tired because we've been at work all day, sitting for 2.5 hours is enough.
Yeah.
Well, let's try to, we have most people are back. Let's resume. Okay, Mr. Pape, you just.
So, Mr. Chair, board members, the last witness, Christine Cofone, is a very important witness, and it's not a witness that's easily rushed. And often the witness is a witness where the board would have meaningful questions.
We need to reschedule this.
We also need to work on architecture and need to have we need to provide you with the data that supports the hours of operation. There may be some others, but those were the ones that I recorded.
That and then the propane.
And the location of the propane facility. So I look to you. We're prepared to conclude our witness presentation this evening. I do, and this is our issue, not yours, going from the February meeting to the May meeting, we used up most of our due diligence time on our contract. If there is a possibility of returning earlier than that or quicker than that, it would be much appreciated. From our perspective, I think that the lion's share of engineering changes have been submitted. We have some work that needs to be done. We need Mr. Tester to get his plans tuned up. But if we could be back in a month, we would very much appreciate it.
Okay, so I mean, what you're suggesting, one sentence you said I confused you. Do you want to hold off on the planning testimony?
I do. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear.
Fine, yes. Okay, I think we agree.
Okay.
I mean, that's sort of a wrap up that addresses the issues with all the variances. And in the case of the propane, for example, it just got brought up. That would be part of that as well. Okay, and at this hour, I think I don't want to then start the public comment either. So that, Loretta, we normally do 2 a month. And we're on the 5th, so our next would be the 19th. What's the agenda for the 19th?
Yeah, I have 2 applications that evening, so we can go to the first meeting in June.
Which would be the 2nd of
June
June.
Or the 16th are both open.
How's the 2nd of June for everyone? It's on the schedule for board members. Mr. Pape?
I'm looking to see, well, actually, it's Michael Testa and Christine. Ms. Cafone is the second or
Yes, it's good. Second is good. It's a good date. Yep.
Mr. Testa?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes, the second is good for me as well.
Okay. I know I believe that the engineering testimony and the traffic testimony are concluded. So
Well, I don't know, right? The witnesses retestified. Do you have to make them available for public questions?
Obviously.
Yes.
So then Mr. Rhea has to come back also?
I'm good for the 2nd. June 2nd, I will be here.
And
Thank you.
Pucci, you or Mr. Plus is available on June 2nd?
I honestly can't speak for Greg. I can say I'm in South Brunswick on the 2nd, but that is likely to move. So between Greg and I, we'll find a way to make sure we get somebody to cover it.
Very good. Then, Mr. Chair, we would accept the June 2nd date.
Okay, so let's just summarize what the open issues are that need to be reviewed. One is the architecture. There were a number of suggestions made about that. The question of the hours, question of the propane. Were there any other significant issues that we need to get everyone to look at and then discuss again at the next time?
That was my list.
That it?
Mr. Pape, I can have an extension until June 3rd. I'll send it to you tomorrow.
I would suggest that you make it till June 30th. And on the record, I'll state that an extension is granted to the board to complete their deliberations and take action through June 30th. And I'll sign the written extension that you provide to me.
Okay.
Okay, so in that case, we will end the discussion of this application for this evening. We'll continue it to Wednesday evening, June 2nd at 7 p.m. with no further notice to the public, and the applicant agrees to the extension to permit that to happen.
Ralph, just as a comment to the public, they need to see the website for the login credentials, which will be different.
So just to reiterate that again, as far as we know at this point, the township is still not meeting in person, although as things improve health-wise from the pandemic, I'm aware that that may get reconsidered by the summer. In any case, for now, we anticipate that the June 2nd will be via Zoom, and hence each session that there is such a Zoom, and the credentials and the login link are different. So you go to the township website and find the agenda for this meeting, which will be posted a few days before the meeting to get the link that's needed.
Very fine. Then
Okay, with that, that ends this application for this evening. Do our professionals or anyone have any other business for tonight?
None from me, Mr. Chairman.
No, nothing from me.
Loretta? You're muted.
No, nothing. I'm good.
Hey, I have a question for Marty. Marty, you know the issue that I talked to you about? Is that something we could talk about here or not really?
The condition on that other matter?
Yep.
It's not, I don't think so.
Okay, no
It has
problem.
nothing to do with this application.
No,
just
of
for the
course,
record.
no, but we finished with this application.
Yeah, it's a prior condition of approval, yeah. But no, that should be something you discuss with Loretta and me and Bob. or whoever.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
good night, all. And thank
Okay,
you.
motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Good evening.
Night,
Have a nice
everybody.
night, everyone.
Good night,
Have a good night, everybody. Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Good
night.
night.